Welcome, Esko Reinikainen and Lari Karreinen, and I'm called Tanja Korvenmaa. We are all open space facilitators based in Finland at the moment, and I just wanted to ask or invite Esko and Lari to have a short dialogue on why do you like open space technology and why it's so interesting and what have you learned about it. And I would like us to create an agenda first and then go into a short conversation. And I'm gonna share my screen with the mural board. And so I've collected some kind of some basic concepts of open space and the kind of a calling question for today, which is, what are you curious to ask your fellow or open space technology practitioner about? So I would invite you to kind of think a short moment with yourself, like what would you like to have a conversation about today, and write it on a post-it note and post it anywhere there, and then we would go. Okay, so we have questions like, what was your first experience of open space technology like, and what was your best experience and why? When did you first understand the power of the format? And how do you convince people who are unfamiliar with the format to try it? What makes open space different from other methods? Great. Yes, I think you can add more if you have more, but these are good questions to start from. So what's the first question? What should we pick first?
Maybe the first experience.
Yeah.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah, I think also these two kind of connect with each other. When did you first understand the power of the formats, and what was your first experience like?
I guess what I meant with that question was when you first experience, it might not be the first time, I think generally it is, but when you first enter this world way of doing things, at some point something clicks in your head, and you might not understand kind of really how the thing is organized or whatever, but you just have a moment where you think, this is different, has potential, this is powerful. And I'm interested in people's stories of when that happened for them and how they were feeling, and how did their thinking change. So Tanja or Lari, welcome to offer.
I'm gonna stop screen sharing so we can see each other's faces better. Lari.
I'm very hard to try to remember when it was. But what I remember is that I have been reading the book, the Harrison Owen's book, Open Space. And I had read about open space before in Finnish, a little bit from the facilitators handbook, but reading the first book was like very eye-opening. And there's more than the method, but Harrison Owen opens up the methodology and the philosophy behind it. And that was like really eye-opening to me, to really understand what's the power of self-organization behind there.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah. So how long was it between when you read the book and kind of saw potential in the theory and then you experienced one?
I can't really remember. It's about 10 years ago, but I remember I experienced it quite during or maybe before reading the book. So first time. So I really don't remember what was my first open space experience. But I remember reading the books about a little bit before or after that. So not a good story, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think what's essential is that having the practice and the theory, having the both in there in the beginning.
Yeah.
How about you?
I could answer if you're still thinking, Tanja.
Yes.
So
yeah,
and I'll answer both of them at the same time, like the power and first experience. My first open space was organized by, I was a public servant working in cultural administration. And there was this group, Voluntary Arts Wales, which was basically an organization handling the interests of the voluntary arts sector. And they needed to write a compact with the Arts Council, which is kind of a state-funded institution that hands out the money for the thing. And they decided, well, we should do this in a participatory way, not just the administrators in the office write some document. So they rented this in the middle of Wales in beautiful countryside, this castle kind of thing. And I had no idea about the format. I think even when I went there, I didn't know that it was going to be an open space. It was just come to this 2-day meeting where we will write this thing together. And I'm not even sure that when I left there, I understood that I had experienced an open space, because they didn't make a big deal of, the philosophy and the theory and the stuff. They just used the formats to do this. And over 2 days, all of these different people who, like, some knew each other, some didn't, went through this. It was an action-orientated open space. So first, wide open thinking, and the second day was actually cataloging things and generating. And I'd never seen such a big, diverse group of people be channeled into exploring ideas and then achieving consensus and writing a really quite powerful document, better than any paid administrators could have managed on their own. So that's when, for me, I thought, what is this magic? I've never seen anything like that. And I think only later I came to understand, oh, they use this format called open space technology to do that. And then I got interested. Oh, maybe I want to learn more about that.
cool,
Oh,
amazing. Yeah, so you got the magic and the first experience at the same time.
Mm.
Yeah, I think my first experience was in Germany in an international kind of a camp that lasted for a month, and one of the methods we used there for one night or for one evening was open space, and we did it in a quite classical way, studying all the principles and so. But the facilitator did say that if you just need this time for yourself, or if you need a good conversation with someone, or if you need to take a nap, then you go for it. and all the others kind of raised up topics like, how can we mitigate conflicts between the south and the north, and and stuff like this. But I had to have a walk and conversation with my boyfriend of the time. So we just kind of did it and let everything else pass, and spend a lovely evening, and then we came back to report, and everybody kind of celebrated us because they had seen this tension between us, and that was the most important thing that we had to do at the time, and it helped the whole community. Yeah, and I remember then afterwards when this was the first experience, and then later I've been to many conferences and always kind of looked up to those who speak, and when I got the chance to actually post my topic on open space agenda, and I was terrified, like, oh my God, I'm calling a session now, and I don't know who is coming and what's happening. But the first session I actually hosted was really, really interesting, and I got to know great people and got a lot of support. So that was also a really good experience. And the most powerful thing was when we had this 7-day open space in Slovenia at an Art of Host gathering, because the whole community kind of started to create its own rhythm instead, like without having to have any special person to facilitate or guide or lead the group. Yeah. So now we have questions like, what makes open space different from other methods?
Yeah, that was my question. So I'm eager to hear what you think. What makes it different and special? Because there's magic in it, but what do you say from your experience?
I have one story that might cover that, and I guess the difference is the real leveling potential of the format and the structure. So the story comes. I ran one with the municipal government, and specifically the part of the municipal government that does the redevelopment of like town centers, things. And the context is that there had just been one town redeveloped, and the experience had been really bad and painful. Basically, the government was taken to court by the local residents, and there was judicial review, and what should have been simple, reconstruction turned into 10 years of legal nightmares and horrible things. And now it was the time for the municipal government to do the next town. And so I suggested, when we start this process, why don't we start with an open space with the people that this activity is going to affect? And of course, without knowing the format, that the responsible people in the municipal government were really quite nervous about it. Like, what do you mean we go into a space with the enemy without an agenda that we can control? Just trust me, it's gonna be fine. And in the first minutes, before we even managed to open the space, like all of the gang from the other town who had taken the government to court showed up. And the first question was, who here is in charge? And the head of redevelopment was sitting there, but we managed to say, well, you can be, because when we open the agenda, what you need to talk about can become a session. The next question was, why have you hired Californian consultants to do this thing? And it was because we had used Eventbrite, and at the bottom of the emails there was a San Francisco address, so we were able to dismiss that. And how much money have you spent on, taxpayers' money have you spent on this thing? And everything had been organized for free, apart for the disabled toilet we had to bring in for the event. So it started like really, it felt like it could go really wrong in the beginning, and the municipal government people were like, oh, here we go again. We knew this was going to happen. But at the end of the day, the sessions were had, the misinformation was corrected, some common understanding was reached. And at the end of the day, the person from the first town who had organized the judicial review and the millions of pounds and tens of years in courts against the government was seen hugging the head of development of the municipal government. And then I thought, now we've achieved something. Yeah.
Really?
They arrived as enemies ready for the next fight, and they walked out and hugged each other. So that affected me quite deeply, I think. Like, okay, this is more powerful than I thought.
Such a powerful story.
Yeah.
Wow. And a brave one, using open space in a conflicted situation. That requires a lot of courage.
Or maybe
wisdom.
Naivety. I mean, the hope was that we can avoid some conflict by starting well, but yeah, it worked.
Yeah, I could share one story from the open space and open space training I went to in the Netherlands, and there was this guy called Michael M. Panwich, who has done a lot of opening the space in Germany, and he was explaining a bit of what he thinks about the law of mobility. That's the only law of open space, that it means that you must take yourself to a place where you are learning or contributing. And it's connected to all the principles, like whatever happens is the right. That is the the only thing that could have happened. And whoever comes is the right people. I think he explained the kind of the importance of actually deciding what do you want to have happen and making it happen by a story. Like, so a dog could have caught a rat, but it had to take a shit. So a dog could have caught a rat, but it had to take a shit. It's a bit raw, but anyway, so you make decisions in life. Of course, some needs are more important than others, and sometimes there's the right time to do stuff, and sometimes it's not. But we are moving in this area of kind of everything has a purpose and everything happens at the right time. And you can also have some effect on what is happening.
Maybe not such a powerful stories as you have, but for me, what's essence in open space, what makes it different, that besides it's a method. So I feel strongly that it's an approach and it's a philosophy. When you really understand the self-organization, the principle of open space. So the idea that you can build organizations around the self-organization, and you can support groups self-organizing if you facilitate other methods, but having the idea of law of 2 feet or the law of mobility to help people to go on those topics with those people that they find important. So get out of the way, make the space for the people. So it's very useful in the open space as a session, and also as an approach to whatever you facilitate, whatever organizations you work with. Follow the energy, where the energy is, and go towards that direction.
Yeah.
Can I do an improvised question?
Sure.
It's not on a post-it. So
whatever happens, happens.
yes. It's clear that the three of us are like quite influenced by the philosophy, the kind of the Owen Harrison thinking, and some of the open spaces or unconference or bar camps that I've been participating in are, I guess, what I would now call derivatives of that don't subscribe to the, like, a lot of the people organizing those never even heard of Owen Harrison. So they have developed little patterns, like essentially it's an open space. But so for example, in the UK government unconference scene, there are no circles at the beginning. There's kind of a stage where you present your topic, and then there's an audience. So it's a face-to-face structure rather than circular one. And they call the session topics pitches, which has got like a sales thing to it. Now, fundamentally, it still works as a kind of people come with no agenda, assemble it together, and then go to the different sessions that they want, and you get by and large the same result. But it misses some things from really the philosophical purity of what an open space is. And one question I wrestle with is, shall I just leave them be? Or do we have a responsibility to say, hey, you're drifting now, and in some cases quite far from the original philosophical intent? And do we have a kind of duty or responsibility to reintroduce some of those things back in? Like now that everything's going online, it's to the point that some of those organizers do not think that it's possible to assemble an agenda on the day in a remote way. So they pre-program it with, fill in this form and we'll pre-populate it before we show up. For me, that's a little bit too far from let's occupy a space and together come up with some kind of agenda.
It's a good question. Well, if the principle is from the open space that whatever happens, happens. So based on that principle, it's okay. And well, I'm guilty of doing open space, not in a pure form, trying a little bit applying it to the situation or the group. Sometimes I go very rigidly through every phase, and sometimes I just win a short, very fast self-organizing group. So I'll just do it in 15 minutes. So yeah, I wouldn't say that we need to guard on the purity of open space, doing it in a way. But, I believe when I teach people open space, so I always emphasize that first do it by the book, so that you really learn and understand the way you do it and why you do things so. And then you can start to improvise. And well, maybe you need to adapt it and to a culture and situation where the organization is. That.
Yeah, I think you've hit on a key difference. So those camps that I referenced, they're a kind of a community with familiarity with each other and very clear parameters, and maybe that's we need to allow evolution, and if things work for them in that way, that's okay. But I think you're right. Like when you said first try to do a pure one, I think if you go to an unknown community, like the example I told with municipal government people who don't understand or necessarily believe in the format, and members of the community who have a history of confrontation, then it's probably a good idea to start with the pure stuff, because it works.
Yeah, I put some photos here, like of the open spaces I've been to, and this is a classical situation when we are kind of creating the agenda together, standing in or sitting in a circle, so everyone can see each other. So we kind of look at each other and see who is there, and then from that situation, like what is the question, what is the conversation I want to have with these people that are here. So if the community already knows each other, if they know who they are, if they know who are coming beforehand, then why not to create the agenda online and save time from the actual event? Like when we create the agenda at the moment, it comes from the kind of the relationships between people.
Yeah.
And here's someone kind of trembling, having this opportunity to call a session and kind of really powerfully stepping into a place of, yes, this is what I want to see happening today.
And then there are technical issues when you're doing the agenda together. When I hear your topic, so I might get an idea for my topic. If we do this online with a questionnaire, we don't get this kind of interaction. A small thing, but it might have a difference.
Yeah, it's these small things that I like, for people who haven't read the book and the theory and the original philosophy and stuff, who won't be aware of the fact that the choices they're making actually make complications. So I mentioned that there's a habit of, like, the session proposer is invited to a stage and talks to face the audience. And Tanja just said, the first time you're in a strange community or even a familiar one, and you decide, I want my voice to be heard, I want my topic to go to the agenda, it can be particularly intimidating. And I think in a circle, it's a little bit less intimidating, but in this face-to-face thing, it means if you want to say something, you're getting to the stage, you're picking up the microphone, and you're talking to an audience. So the intimidation factor, and then as a consequence of that, this community is kind of finding ways and adaptations to make it less intimidating. So there's this idea of pitch buddies, right? So if you don't feel comfortable going there, you can talk to somebody who will do it on your behalf. But it's like you're making adaptations and compensations because you have created a problem of us versus them by not understanding the principle of an egalitarian circular structure, or by choosing a room that doesn't allow that in the first place. Like the environment is super terribly important, and if you say we can't find a big enough room to sit in a circle, so we'll go into this room that forces us to have this confrontational structure. That was more of a rant, I think.
So what was there still? What do we have in the questions? How do you convince people who are unfamiliar with the format to try it and participate?
I could actually take from that and come to what Esko talked about intimidating also in this story. This was many years ago. I was asked to facilitate an open space for the Red Cross youth. Previous year they had their yearly annual meeting. For 3 hours they had been, writing a press release. And there were 2 people out of 100 or 3 people out of 100 who were very keen on how the words and all the commas in that press release are. It was hard, important for them, but not for the 97 others who thought, well, I could use my youth better than just listening to this crap for 3 hours. So they called me and, okay, we have heard something like open space. Would you come to help us? Sure, yeah. Okay, so there was no need for doing things in another way. And then we're starting out what really is open space, that you really don't make the agenda beforehand. So the client was like scared. What happens if you get 100 young people between 15 and 25 in the room and nobody says a thing? So what do you do? I was trying, okay, relax, it never happens. They have topics of importance, don't worry. But they were like scared, we need to have these, we have these bylaws and we need to do these press releases and talk through certain topics because after that session they would have their annual meeting. So I said, okay, that's fine. Let's do so that we take these bylaws and this press release for 2 groups, and all the other groups can decide whatever they want to do. And those people who are interested on those topics can go to those 2 sessions. Okay, we'll do that. And we have all the 100 young people there around the room, a very big room. And in the beginning, nothing happens. Everybody's so, intimidated, going in the front of 100 other people in the middle of the circle, taking up your session, and nothing happens. And the client is next to me and, hey, Lari, what do we do? Nobody says a thing. I said, calm down, breathe, it will happen. And eventually it started. The first one got applause, taking up her or his topic, I don't remember. And then came the next one and next one. And then we had one, I remember she was very, nervous. I don't know if this is a good topic, so I don't come to post it in the front of the hall. I'll put it here besides this wall. And all the other young people said, no, it's important, take it to the front. So she went to the front in the end and put her topic also there. So we had a wonderful open space, very energetic. What happened was that people took responsibility on these initiatives. So they took those initiatives to their annual meeting and started working on them afterwards. So they just didn't, the conversations and the effects they took, and how can we do this in action? So they really took the responsibility and did things the year after the open space. And for that, that scared 15-year-old girl, her idea was, could you do something, youth action in a Minecraft world? 2 years after that, the Red Cross published its Minecraft world. It just went like, whew.
Yeah.
And afterwards, the client came to me and said, okay, Lari, we don't need these predetermined sessions anymore. We trust that this happens and people know what they care about. And what they also learned is using the power of like self-organization. So we can really support the people doing things in action. And we did it once, actually twice. And it was a very good experience. I never got such a good feedback from the participants. It was very empowering for them. They were the stars. They were the ones who set the agenda. They were everyone was active. So yes, people are scared before they have their really first experience in open space. It's a radical thing.
I'm having like tears.
Yeah, about a month after this first open space, so I had another open space with elderly people, about retired teachers in their 60s and 70s. And they were, that stuff you can do with young people, not with older people. Sure you can. And we did it. And it was wonderful. One grandma came to me and said, Lari, I first thought this was very messy. I didn't understand. But it did work. It did work. It was beautiful. Those old ladies with their bags sitting there around there and having chats. And it works in every scenario, in every culture. It just has the power. It has the minimalistic elements what you need.
How many times I've found myself saying to a client, it just works.
Yeah.
You have all kinds of questions. I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to use words like magic. It just works. The structure works.
We once talked with the open space facilitator about our experiences when open space doesn't work. And we found out what if you don't believe in open space, if you don't believe that people have the power and the capacity to do things, and if you reflect that feeling to the participants, if the sponsor doesn't really feel and trust the open space, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
All the other cases, it works.
Yeah. I was also thinking of the calling question. Did you talk about that? Like I was thinking if so the open space works best if there's some urgent issue that needs to be dealt with, so that people have invested interest in that topic and they want to move forward with something around that. So it's a kind of a first task of a facilitator to try to find out what is the burning question around, how can we put words into this thing that is in the middle of all the people, and what kind of lights the energy.
I'm curious to ask Esko, do you remember what was your calling question in that setting where you have this conflict situation?
Not exactly, but it was like the municipal government is about to start the process of regenerating this town. We wish to start this process with an open dialogue with the people it will affect before we make any big decisions. The only decision made is that this town is getting the treatment next, not what is happening or how much money is going there. So yeah, and I think those 2 points you've both just made are if the sponsor doesn't believe it or trust it, and if the calling question is badly formed, I think that's right. I've since added a question: what's your worst open space experience? And I've got one in mind I'm thinking about, and both of those things were wrong. So it was a large organization, well, not large, 500, 600 people, annual all staff gathering day, which normally was some normal conference. So the people who showed up were the people who were forced to come that day. and the agenda was predetermined and vetted by management. So some of the topics were struck out as too dangerous, and that really started like bad starting conditions for an open space. But even in that, some magic things happened, like some managers trying to write the customer's manual, and one of the workmen who's in contact with the customers seeing that and saying, these manuals, they throw them out immediately. What they don't know is like this is an organization that does social housing for people. So they have maintenance men and they do the gardens and things like that. And all the arguments they always had with people was whose responsibility is, you know, cutting the grass or painting the fence, or what is it, my job or is it your job? And at the end of that meeting, they just threw out the whole idea of a manual, and they made one card that's given to the customers and to the workers. On the left side, we handle this. On the right side, you handle that. And whenever they had an argument, they both brought out their cards and said, "Oh, right, yeah, that's your job," or "That's my job." Super simple hack. No need for big documents that get thrown away. Peace between the customers and the organization. So even some magic like that can happen in a situation which is badly formed. There's no trust in, you know, maybe I can say the clients for the organization wanted to be seen to have done this cool thing called open space, but had absolutely no intention of relinquishing enough control to let it happen properly.
I have one experience also where the open space went well. We had about 100 participants. It was in an auditorium, so not a good place to have, but we didn't have anything else. But we could do the marketplace there, even though we couldn't have a circle. What happened afterwards was I told the client that you need to support, and to people do initiatives in the open space, you need to support afterwards those initiatives. And now the organization was very hierarchical. So they needed green light from the manager. They needed from the managers to push those topics on the agenda afterwards. And the managers were good. They were hardworking people, but they didn't have the time. All the people were too busy with their normal work. So almost everything that happened in the open space was lost because the managers didn't have the time to take it up and let the self-organization to happen. One initiative from that open space lived, but all the others died. And then people came afterwards a little bit, you know, frustrated to say feedback, okay, it's not a good method, it's not a good idea to facilitate. And it's not if you can't support what happens afterwards. But again, good people, just too much work to do on their working list. So
yeah. And also, like, I think what is important that you should, I mean, what are the next steps after the open space event? Have to be next steps for individual people that are responsible of their own steps after. So you can't kind of make, so that yes, we worked on this and we decided that you have to do this. It doesn't really work like that.
And they didn't really get the idea that whoever takes up the topic can have the leadership and act on that topic even after the open space session, because they were very used to do on certain structures, and the managers held up those structures.
Yeah, that's one from, like, in an organization context, from senior managers and leaders who might be sponsoring this thing. That's a worry that I hear quite a lot. Like, how do you guarantee this doesn't turn into a big job list being organized for me?
Yeah.
And it's that taking responsibility and self-organization, but it requires also from the leadership, like, if somebody steps up and demonstrates the capability and the willingness to do something, will you give them the authority or the responsibility, or do you control everything and close them down?
And that's exactly what I say about open space as an approach or philosophy that extends after the method. In a way, you organize the organization, and you live by the way of leading organizations.
And in a way, it becomes a lifestyle that you can see open space happening all over the place and all the time. And you can see that if you take initiative in something, you will become responsible of taking it forward. And kind of, at least I have become a bit more considerate of where I contribute my energy to, and then get actually more done because of that.
I agree for my part also, and also it relieves your stress on the principle that whatever happens, happens. So working on that principle so you can be more relaxed in any cases.
That's interesting how that principle can be like, it's your freedom card to relax, and it's also the terror card for some sponsor managers who feel very uncomfortable when they don't have the control. So it kind of sorts out the control freaks from the free navigators based on the reaction you get to that. And I've had some very strong, like, I want to do an open space, but take that one away. Yeah. Like when the client says we want to see all of the topics and edit them before they go to the floor. That's I don't accept that whatever happens is going to happen.
Yeah. Now it's 1:55, and we're supposed to end at around 2. So I would ask for a kind of a checkout round. Is there any thoughts or ideas you still want to say, or what did you get or learn from this conversation? I'm just gonna put this just for if anyone's listening to this or watching this from YouTube, then I'm gonna share this screen once more to kind of repeat the principles of open space.
For me, this conversation has been really useful, and I think should have have it more often, because it's useful to reflect your own practice and the questions that you're holding about which way it could go, or what's successful, where evolution is potential. I think I hold some scars because I once attended the open space on open space gathering, and that particular experience was a collection of fabulous egos in glorious disagreement at that time in the history. So I've kind of shied away from other open space facilitators. I'm like, I do it my way, it works, and actually I think that's misguided. I think we should be talking to each other more and reflecting on our practices, and this conversation has helped me quite a lot to like relax about some things I was panicking about, and reconfirm some of the things that maybe I've been letting slide away.
How about you, Lari?
I was really deeply impressed, Esko, about your story of handling an open space in a conflict. I know there has been people using this in a conflict situation. I haven't had the courage or the possibility to do that, and whoa, that's just made an impression to me. I will thought into that in the future. A very good learning point, because usually in the conflict situation you very rigidly go through some mediation process, and in that sense when you do the open space, and does the magic. So that's a really good learning experience and point for me also. Thank you for sharing that. And I think I could wrap up with this Peggy Holman's quote here, which I think is beautiful. Open space is based on the belief that organizations and communities run on passion and responsibility. It allows groups of any size to self-organize around what they really care about to get things done. I think these two sentences put it really well. What's it all about?
Yeah, thank you for reading that out loud, Lari. Yeah, I thank you for being reminded of this and of the power of open space. And the whole conversation reminds me of my responsibility in life. So thank you for participating, and let's talk more.
Tanya, what's the next open space you're going to?
A small advertisement. So me and Lari, me and Esko, we are actually going to organize an open space event online May 14th. And this open space event is for systems changers. So whoever is interested in systems change, it can be approached from various aspects. Maybe Esko can talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I just wanted to give people a way to find it.
Oh yeah.
This is for the systems change community. Systems changers come in all shapes and sizes, and we think it's about time that the community as a whole, like the different sub-tribes, come together and share what's on their mind, what's on their current agenda, and see if there's some possibilities for cross-pollinating. And to our knowledge, this group of people have never gathered in this way with the possibility to emerge their agenda. So we're quite excited about that.
Welcome.
All.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.